Hey guys, it's Frankie, Simply Imaginary People, and this is just a short tutorial on how to solidify efficiently. So since I made the tutorial on how to make clothing from start to finish, I've changed a couple of things I do. So the first thing I do is import my mesh into Blender straight away, so I don't go over Milkshape. And here under this materials tab, I will delete all the materials I have. And then I will UV map it, bake it, and do my textures. So once I've pretty much done the mesh and I've done all my textures, what I want to do then is solidify it. So I've decided to pick an old mesh of mine because it's pretty good at showing you what needs to be done. So the first thing you'll realize is we still have seam lines, and I used to align normals right at the beginning, and now I don't anymore. I do this right at the end. So let me show you what I do. So pretend that I've literally, you can see it is UV mapped here, and I've already baked a texture, as you can see. I'll show you here, I've done the textures, I've UV mapped it. So next would be solidifying. Now theoretically I could solidify the entire thing, and let's just say, oh wait, I need to delete some of the old solidified bits here. That would increase my texture by like 3 million. So I usually don't do that. My poly count. So my poly count at the moment is 5,000. I can see this here. It says tris 5,000. Usually try to keep it around 8,500 maximum because I still need to add a body to it, which is just the feet in this case, but still. So yeah, if I solidified the entire thing, I would at least double that. So I'd definitely come over my 10. So what I'm going to do is first of all, at the bottom, I don't need to solidify this. There's an easy way to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my UV map and I'm going to make sure I'm in vert select mode. And I'm going to select the bottom of this. Is the top one? Nope. Once around the foot area. So literally just the bottom row of these verts along an edge. So for areas where it's, let's say, not very wide, so it's not very loose, like feet, sleeves, neck areas, this is the easiest way to do it. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide the body for a minute, and I'm just going to press E on my keyboard, and then click once, and then press S to scale and drag it inwards. And you can see I'm literally closing up the hole. If I now see, you'll see that there's no, I can't see the inside anymore. Oop. Now it usually looks kind of weird if you leave it like this, so I like to pull it up quite a bit so that you get an edge, so it still kind of looks a bit like clothing. Depending how far you scale it and pull it in. Now the thing is, theoretically now I've stretched the texture. The best way to show you this is to say image, open a checker map. Wait, let me just undo that. History, undo, right. If I open a checker map, then I can always see, go to texture, I can kind of see the scaling of the texture. So I'm going to do the same thing I just did. So I'm going to press E, click, and then scale inwards, and then move up. And you can see I'm really stretching the texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm here in my 2D window, I'm just going to press G and then Y. And that means I can move these only up and down. And you can see I can move them up to, I usually go not off of my UV map. So make sure you stay on this UV map because then it will keep the texture, it's literally going to copy this texture on the front and put it on the inside, which, being that you can't see the inside, is good, but it also won't look stretched. But just make sure you stay within your UV map so you don't have to extra texture. This also saves space without you needing to make more texture. So now I've kind of scaled it down a bit and these checkers look slightly more square than they did before. What I need to do now, because this is now a very sharp pointy edge, is I need to edge split it so that my normal don't go all weird. So I'm just going to select those two rows again, press spacebar and say edge. I'm just going to say edge split. There we go. Now instead of solidifying all this interior bit, I've literally only duplicated the verts on the rim. Some people make sure you can't see inside the mesh anymore when you've got the body active. Some people don't like the sharp edge. They say it doesn't look realistic. They like the edge that Solidified gives you, so with the rim. So let's do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say E, and I'm going to say scale, and I'm only going to scale in a tiny bit, so I've got a rim. And again, I'm going to press G and Y, and I'm going to move it down for the minute, because it makes it easier for me to see. And then I'm going to say E again, click, scale, and move up. So now I've got this rim that looks a bit more like clothing, because clothing, it has some thickness. I like to do this usually on collars, because collars you can see and a rim looks nice. So again, now I'm just going to say GY, and I'm going to move this up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to edge split both of these lines. So this inner rim, spacebar edge split, and the outer rim, because both of these are sharp edges, edge split. There we go, and now I'm just going to take these bits that I moved off, and I'm just going to say GY and move them in about as high as this is wide. Doesn't really matter that much, just so it's not completely stretched texture. And there you can see now I have a rim. So I can either do it like this is easier and has lower poly, or this with a nice rim. And because I've got overlaying text, you can see I can see inside here. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing up here. So I'm going to say E, and I'm going to say scale. I'm just going to pull it in. I don't need to pull it in very far. GY, and then do the same thing and edge split. And this way I can fill up circular holes, things like sleeves, without much effort. I would do the same on here, but I'm not going to waste the time. Okay, for things like this, here I can see the back of, if I just go to solid, here I can see, you can see it's a darker grey, I can see the back of this shirt. I obviously can't extrude this into somewhere, otherwise it would just look weird. So this part I need to solidify, and the same with the straps. That would look weird if I just dragged it into the body. But I obviously don't want to solidify the entire thing, so what I'm going to do is, because I don't want to solidify these lower folded bits, I'm going to hover over this and press L, turn it around, hover over the back part, press L, and hover over the two straps as well. Also, obviously not going to hover over the buttons because I don't want those solid. And I'm just going to press P, and I'm going to say parent here, separate selection. Cool. Now I can go back to object mode, and I can right click on the group I just made, and I can... So the first thing I'm going to make sure is that all of my edges have this blue rim around them. So that means all the way along it should have this blue rim. Usually it already does. This is quite important. Makes your life a lot easier if it does. If not, let's say there's no rim here, I'm just going to go to edge select here, edge, right click the edge, or shift right click the edges that don't have a blue rim, and say Control E, and I'm going to say mark sharp. So if I do it here, I'll show you. I'm going to say Control E, mark sharp, and you'll see it gets a blue line. And Control E, clear sharp, I can get rid of it again. So if I've made sure all my edges are sharp, I can solidify. So let's say solidify. Obviously don't want it that thick, so I'm just going to drag this down. So when I'm happy with the thickness, I'll say apply, and then I'm going to say add modifier edge split, untick edge angle, and it'll edge split along the sharp edges. So instead of you having to select the edges and edge split, it does it automatically for you. So I'm going to say apply. Awesome. But now I've solidified the entire part of this because it's one bit of mesh. That means I've solidified all the leg part, and I really, really don't need that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to press L and select the front. And if you've edge split properly, so if all your lines were sharp and blue, you'll see it only selects the front, and it doesn't select the back, and it doesn't select the side. This is what we want. So I'm going to do that for this, 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 and this. And I'm just going to press P and say parent by selection again. Right, now if I zoom out you can see it. All I've got is the back faces. So I can make my life easy. I'm going to press 1 on my numpad so I can see from the front. I'm going to turn on this so that I can select all the way through. And I'm just going to make a box by holding B, make a box like here. And I've selected all these verts. Now I've selected pretty much the verts that I can't see. You'll see when I'm like looking in, I can just about see these verts, but nobody's going to stare in that far into your top. And I'm making sure I'm not selecting the ones I can see. And then I'm just going to say delete. And that way I have literally just reduced my poly count by, you can see, I've selected about 5,000 verts, and I was at 5,000, now I'm at 1,000. So I literally just deleted 4K's worth just by deleting an area that I don't need. The other bit that you can do then is now select the inside vert. So that, and that. And parent them again, and you're left with these edges. Now the edges you obviously need along the edge, but these edges down the sides, they actually just make your vert count and your poly count higher without doing much. So what I can do is, you'll see in my 2D window, if you have sync on here, you'll see the edges here. So what I can do is I can select the vert that go up the side, only those. I don't want to delete the top ones because they're the ones I can see. So I'll select these ones that go up the side. See, you can see the orange lines and these ones that are hidden, and I can just delete these two. And I've saved another amount, so you can see 400, and I've gone to 300. It's not much, but every little bit makes a difference. So now what you can see is I've pretty much solidified within like 5-10 minutes. Without much effort, and my poly count is hopefully not too high. Now I have lots of different groups, so I'm just going to regroup them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hide this body. I'm going to right click one group and then I'm just going to press A and A again, and you'll see it selects everything. So make sure you've hidden all the other stuff that doesn't belong to your mesh. I'm just going to say join. Perfect. And now if I go to edit mode, you'll see my poly count is 6,600. So instead of the 11,000 it would have been if I'd have solidified the whole thing, I'm now about 6,000, maybe 7,000 if I finish the top bit of that leg, even though it shouldn't be that much of a problem. Right, so now the thing that still bothers me is these horrible lines down the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edit mode and I'm going to press L and make sure I select all the outside faces, so all the outside layers. So that's an outside layer, that's an outside layer, that's an inside layer, I don't want that. Go down here, and also not the bits that you extruded. So L, 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 L. I don't want these inside bits. Don't want the buttons either. And I'm going to press P and say parent by selection. So I've got one group that only has the outside bits. Now I'm going to select only the inside bits, so that are visible, or generally all of them I usually do. So that's these three layers. Make sure you don't select the rim. And also going to select these inner bits. So that inner bit and that inner bit. Again, not selecting the rim. And I could do this one if I wanted to, but I can't really see it, so it's not that big of a deal. And say P and parent. So now I've got three groups. I've got the outside faces, the inside faces, and all the leftover rim bit. Now I'm just going to press A again to make sure I've selected everything, and then say File, Export to Wavefront Object, Selection Only, and untick objects as object groups, and tick objects as object, untick objects as objects, tick objects as object group. I'm just going to call this toot because it's for the tutorial, and export it. Now, what happens if I tick that is it means that it keeps those groups that I made, so the front, the back, and the rest separate. So if I say wave import an object now, okay, and I import this, you'll see, let me just delete all the materials like always, wait till this thing's gone away. you'll see I now have 3 groups. I've got this is all the rims and the buttons that I don't want to edit. This is the front, and this is the back. Now, you can see I've got some normal issues here. There's a weird dark spot, and I've got this horrible rim. Now, what would happen if just going to show you, select, regroup. If I align the normals for all of these, is you can see that I kind of get these horrible black shadows along the edge, which I don't like. They look weird, especially at the bottom here. I mean, that's just awful. So let's just undo the regrouping. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select only the front group, and I'm going to say vertex align normals. And you'll see it aligns my normals, but because it's not grouped to the other bit, it'll ignore the sharp edge because, let's see if I can explain this better. This is a sharp edge. If I align normals in milk shape, it'll try and align the normal to this sharp edge, and that always causes black shadows because the normal doesn't know if it should be facing this direction, so that it's like this all is gray, or this direction, like inwards from this plane here. So what it ends up doing is it points a normal like in this direction, so at a diagonal, and that's what causes this area to look black, because if the light needs to fall in this direction, up like at this angle for it to be light, then if the light is falling from the front, this area is going to be black. So by separating those groups, it also says like only look at this vert, and this plane doesn't exist, so the light has to be coming from the front. Don't know if that makes much sense, but it works. So you can see I can now align normals right at the end, even after solidifying, which is always good because sometimes the normals do like to mess up while you're fiddling around in Blender. So now I'm just going to unselect that group and select the back faces group. I'm not going to select the rim group because I don't need to. And I can just do the same thing and say align normals. Might not do much difference, but it's nice to know. And then I can regroup them and continue on, so add the body, blah blah blah, fix the seams, import everything. So that's just a quick tutorial on efficient solidifying and aligning normals.